Today on Context, the faces of comedy, and we'll take a deeper look into the world of funny and find out how God factors into it all.
Hey, did you hear the one about the guy who told jokes for a living? He said it was no laughing matter. Context looks at the faces of comedy with rising star Jim Gaffigan, who puts the funny in food, fatherhood, and faith. Then we sit down with the up-and-coming female comedians to find out more about what it means to be a comedian today. And later we chat with Dan Rupple, who talks to us about how his faith has steered his 30-plus years in comedy.
To find the divine in humor is what we're exploring today in this special edition of Context. Recently, I had the pleasure of sitting down with funny man Jim Gaffigan to talk about his new book, Food, a Love Story, and how his wife has ultimately brought him closer to God. Okay, Jim Gaffigan, I don't think we've ever had a guest that has had so much action on the Twitter feed. You've been a guest on Letterman, you're all over the place. And this new book, Food, a Love Story. And I did expect you to be as thin as the guy on the book cover, the little plastic groom. But when did your love affair with food begin?
Yeah, I'm not sure where it necessarily began, but I've always had a strange attachment to food. I mean, I kind of document in the book that my sister Pam, for my, I think, 8th or 10th birthday party present, bought me a package of hot dogs and a 6-pack of Dr. Pepper. So I've always had a strange relationship with food, but writing stand-up about food is something that I've done pretty much for the last 20 years.
So are you a foodie?
No, I'm not a foodie, and that's not. I don't
Define
have any,
what a foodie really is.
Well, how I understand a foodie is someone that enjoys understanding and sampling new dishes and going on culinary adventures. I'm a little too lazy for that, and I'm not bored with regular food. So I'm not interested in trying a Japanese taco. I just want a hamburger, and I don't want to go on an adventure to get it. I want the closest, best burger.
Okay, and you don't like recommendations from skinny people about
why? I just think it's odd how we take food advice, even from a waiter. I mean, we don't know them. They're essentially a stranger, but I do that. I'm like, you don't know me, what should I eat, you know? But skinny people, I just think, how enthusiastic can they be about food if they're not overdoing it, right? I'm not saying that we should I'm not going to take advice from a morbidly obese person, because they obviously will eat anything, but I'm saying that like someone that kind of overdoes it, like me, is probably great at advice.
Well, that brings us to your book, Dad is Fat, a great New York Times bestseller. Where does Dad is Fat come from?
Well, Dad is Fat it's really interesting. You know, I'm a comedian, which is a nocturnal existence, and I kind of saw myself, like many of my friends, single and enjoying this kind of inward, almost narcissistic existence. And then I married this woman who's a Shiite Catholic, and we got married and we had 5 kids, and she's the most fertile woman on the planet.
And how extreme do you have to be a Shiite Catholic?
Well, I joke. I mean, she's a devout Catholic, which is...
Jeannie?
Yeah, Jeannie. And she is, her mom's like really Catholic. She already got early admissions to heaven. Like the letter came and everything. But my wife there's no goalie, there's no birth control, no nothing.
You have 5 children?
Yes. And I haven't talked to her in an hour, so there could be more.
Okay, so I'd love to know what dinner is like at the Gaffigan home. 5 little kids.
It's like eating with orangutans. Half of them don't know how to sit in a chair, and then some of them, miss their face. Like, babies are really bad at eating, But it's fun. I think it's, eating with someone is a very intimate thing, and so I relish it. And I'm lucky that being a comedian, I can eat with my kids and then go out and do stand-up after they go to bed.
So favorite dishes for 5 children? Favorite meals at the Gaffigan home?
Well, it's interesting, because what I think, at least my children love, they seem to love food that is most likely to end up on the floor. So they love tacos, but eating a taco with a 4-year-old is no different than just throwing a taco on the ground. So, and they love spaghetti, but they can't, if it's a linguine noodle, it has to be the bow tie. But then they're still
That's not
eating it
really
with their
spaghetti then,
hands.
yeah.
And it looks like they were just rubbing it on their face.
Okay.
But it's fun. But they love spaghetti with meat sauce, which I love too. So.
And do you still, you say you get to eat with your kids. You also had a rule earlier in your career. You really tried not to work on Sunday.
Look, I mean, I love being a comedian. It's very important for, creative fulfillment and I think mental stability, which is a whole other topic. But in the end, I don't want to, fail as a dad. I mean, my joke is like being a dad is the most important thing I will fail at. So yeah, so Sundays off is, there needs to be a day where I'm not drawn into the never-ending circus, which is my life, which is...
Okay, so let's talk about mental health in this industry. You know, when
Yeah.
Robin Williams died, it was
Yeah.
a spotlight on the comedic's dark side, the sad clown. What have you learned about that?
Well, the weird thing is that, not to turn this on myself, but like when Robin Williams, when that horrible tragedy happened, and he was such a nice guy, is that all I could think was like, we're all infected. Because comedians are really creative people. I mean, there is something about, what are we doing? I mean, I love doing stand-up comedy, but I'm not going to sit here and say going on stage and making a room full of strangers laugh is normal. That's not normal. But I do think that for me, that's where having kids, I think, is a great gift. It's, and I talk about it a little bit in Dad is Fat. It's like, I'm not saying it's a cure for narcissism, but you can't really be feeling sorry for yourself when you have to get up and feed a baby at 2 a.m. You might complain about it.
Good for your mental health as well.
It keeps perspective.
Okay, so you talked about Jeannie, your wife, being a Shiite Catholic.
Yes.
What kind of Catholic are you? What does your faith life mean to you?
Well, I'm definitely Catholic. And it's weird because, being a comedian that even believes in God saying that is the equivalent of like being gay in the 50s. It's just very strange. And people are like, okay, because it's kind of inconsistent with the spirit of a comedian. That's not to say that it's
Don't you think God
incompatible.
can laugh? God has a great sense of humor. You'd
Oh,
think.
absolutely. I'm talking about the perception among my peers. I grew up very much a secular Catholic, a cultural Catholic. I didn't really know what it was. I was supposed to do the Hail Mary before every football game as a captain, and I didn't know it. But, so I'd be like, Hail Mary, blah, 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 But I do think that, at least in the United States, there is this culture war that I find very annoying. I don't want to be on a team. I just want to have my own kind of experience, and I don't want to subject it on somebody else.
So where did it switch for you if you grew up a secular Catholic and now God is very important to you? Where did it switch?
I think it was definitely my wife. But there's also, the notion of mercy is something that I need a lot of. You know what I mean? So it's like the logic around my spirituality or faith is like, it makes perfect sense to me. But if I even articulate it, it loses some of its power. I mean, I don't mind the fact that my tweets are sometimes churches will use them as an example, and sometimes atheist groups will use them as an example, because all it matters is what I was meaning by it.
Okay, so now you're in Canada, and you're going to do some checking out of our food, your great book, Food. Okay, how are you with poutine?
I love poutine. I mean, I think it's relatively irresponsible. I mean, but I love it. I mean, I was in Ottawa last April, and I went to the second Poutine Fest of the year, and it was April. So it means someone had Poutine Fest, in Ottawa, and they were like, let's do it again next month. And so I love poutine, but that's not to say that, I mean, I remember that I had it, and at one point I heard my heart say, are you mad at me?
So you're off to the prairies. They make this
Yes.
amazing farmer's sausage in the
Oh,
prairies.
great.
You like bratwurst, right?
Yes, I love bratwurst.
Okay, tell us about how you know you've got a good bratwurst.
My wife is from Wisconsin, and I remember that I knew that this was a special woman because I started comparing her to bratwurst. I was like, she's amazing. You know, she's memorable. I can't stop talking about her. And it reminded me of bratwurst. And I know that's kind of silly, but there is something about a bratwurst which is amazing, but it's also a summer thing. You can't have it year-round. But my wife, year-round.
Okay, bacon. You love bacon.
I love bacon.
Okay.
I had the pea meal bacon sandwich today from St. Lawrence Market.
Good here in Toronto.
Wow,
yeah.
that was good.
Yeah,
that
that's
was
famous here. Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. I mean, and you know, it's interesting because there's these tourist traps or these famous meals, and I would say that 70% of the time they're good, but that's
okay.
great.
Okay, we got bacon.
That's great.
Bacon, look, I've got something for you. I know you like carrying boxes of food on the
Oh
airport.
yes. What is this?
Bacon butter tarts.
Oh my gosh, that's
Bacon butter tarts from the Context team. They're
Oh
just,
my gosh,
they're
they're
just
great.
like, you can smell them, right? They're just
I'll
amazing.
probably eat them before I get on the plane.
They're made in a little abbey that is down by the water
So
out
they're
in
holy.
Muskoka.
So I don't have to go to church.
Well, the church is now a bakery, so go figure that one out. But it's just a wonderful
Wow.
Canadian treat for you. We're so glad that you came and joined
That's
us.
great. Thanks
Yeah.
so much. These are amazing.
You will have to come back to Context.
I will, definitely.
Yeah, next time
I
we'll
will.
find a bratwurst treat as well.
Yes.
Jim Gaffigan, thank you very much for being
Thanks
with
so much.
Context.
That was amazing.
Coming up, we take a look at women working in comedy.
This week on Lorna's Books, we have none other than Food, a love story by Jim Gaffigan. If you love his comedy, you'll love this tongue-in-cheek look at his illustrious affair with food. In his own words, Jim Gaffigan personally describes this book as betterer than his last book, and it can be yours free by simply going to our website, contextwithlorna.com, and clicking on Lorna's Books for your chance to win your very own copy. Good luck.
Coming soon on Context, T.D. Jakes, the remarkable motivational pastor, sits down with Sheldon Neal in Dallas, Texas to talk about dreams and the motivation it takes to make them come true. You won't want to miss it.
This segment is brought to you by Bruce Etherington and Associates, Family Harmony and Philanthropy, helping you help others.
Canadians are known around the world for their comedy. And with more and more women climbing the comedy ranks, from Ellen to Tina Fey and homegrown favorites like Catherine O'Hare and Mary Walsh, we decided to go looking for comedy's next generation of female comedians. Take a look. Second City has been making Toronto laugh for 42 years. Comedy legends Dan Aykroyd, John Candy, and Martin Short got their start here. We sat down with comedians Ashley Botting and Lee Cameron to learn about their craft.
When did I know I was funny? I mean, I don't know. I was always a huge ham. My parents the other day were like telling me that since I was a kid, like they couldn't shut me up. I think my thing is that I was a really chubby kid, and so I used humor as a way to like make people like me. And you know, it's like make fun of yourself before they make fun of you, kind of thing. Yeah, but I always liked like Mad Magazine and stuff like that. It was just what I was. I didn't like Barbies. I didn't like dolls. I didn't really care about that. I liked the funny stuff.
I guess I didn't ever really think I was funny. I mostly just thought I was a big weirdo and was treated as such. And then my mom convinced me to invest time in comedy, I guess.
We talk women in comedy.
I wish there were more women around when I was growing up, because I feel like, I don't know, in the 80s it was all like somebody's wife, or you know, they were all playing the secretary. So I loved like Dana Carvey, I loved Jim Carrey, I loved Michael J. Fox. I loved what he did on Family Ties and in Back to the Future. He's not like a comedian, but he was just so cute in that DeLorean, so I could not get enough of him. Yeah, he had that vest. So yeah, but now, I mean, I wish I had had like the Tina Feys and the Amy Poehlers and all those ladies when I was growing up, because I would have known what was possible.
I think there's still an imbalance, but it's come a long way. Like, we went from 2 women to 3 guys on the stage to 3 in the last, how many years ago was that? Like, not that long ago.
Yeah, they used to have 4 guys and 2 girls, and I always hated that because I was like, so that the implication is that they're just better at this than us, which is not true. I think we have the edge on them, but
Oh, yeah.
yeah, that's fine.
We've
They
just
know
been
it.
like lying in wait for a century.
Yeah.
Now we're coming for them.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of stories that haven't been told because there haven't been like as strong a presence of women in comedy. So there's a lot more untold stuff that's kind of like coming to the surface now.
Yeah.
And might there be an advantage to being a Canadian comic?
There's not a lot to do in the winter, so you just
Yeah.
like sit around making jokes.
That says a whole lot of science behind that. Like they say
Thank
that
you. I've done the research.
colder countries invent more.
Really?
And Second City has invented a provocative new show, How to Kill a Comedian.
I mean, the title itself came from the Charlie Hebdo massacre that happened in Paris. And it came from the idea that the way to kill someone's creativity, and in our case, our comedy, is to not let us say what we want to say, and not let us speak freely. And that was an idea that we kind of started rolling with. And there are themes of it throughout the show. Not every sketch relates to that. But yeah, we kind of felt we needed to say something about that.
Can you say to who, when is it right to say it, and when is it wrong?
And who decides what's right and wrong? I'm gonna go Tina, only because Tina's a Second City girl, and she's an improviser and is a writer, and I just think I relate to her more. She's not better, I just think I get her more.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say better either, but I also probably go Tina Fey.
Then last night you said you thought that Ellen was better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do have that tattoo that says Ellen is better.
Laughter may look natural, but it takes study and practice.
Well, both of us went through school at Second City, so we are lifers.
Yeah, it's like comedy university, you know, because there's no real. I mean, there's some programs you can go to, but there's no training, like on your feet training in front of an audience to figure out not only what do they think is funny, but also like what do I think is funny, because we all have different comedic voices and we all have different things that we think are funny and different things we want to say. Yeah, it's a really amazing training.
What's in store for women in comedy?
I think what's so great about women in comedy now is they're creating their own content. Someone else isn't deciding for them what they're going to do. So you look at Amy Schumer, you look at Mindy Kaling, you look at Tina Fey. They're all at the helm of their shows, and they're all very much in control of what the content of the shows are. And I want to see more of that for women in comedy, because then we ensure that our voices get heard. But also, I want to do that.
Now there's so much more with the internet, so much more access to an audience. So I hope to be involved also, create some stuff.
Okay,
People can cast me in things.
Are you going to put me in your stuff and I'll put you in mine?
Yeah, okay.
The answer to that should be okay.
yeah,
I'll put
it
you in a
is, yeah,
castle.
sure.
Do you want to live in a castle
Yeah,
in
sure,
mine?
sure.
You're not going to be the princess though. You're going to be sweeping up
No,
after
I
that.
want to be the hunchback.
Okay, done. This is great. This is great.
Well, Dan Rupple is the founder of the Christian Comedy Association and the comedy group Isaac Air Freight. He also spent close to a decade as supervising producer for The Price is Right, Late Night with David Letterman, and the 49th Emmys. So Dan, though, is now a pastor and an author on faith, and he joins us today from Irvine, California. Hi, Dan.
Hi, Lorna. It's good to be with you.
Well, you're a veteran of the funny business with some great credits under your belt. Let's talk about David Letterman. I'm one of those people who've watched him late night for so long. What tools do you need to make funny happen there?
Well, first of all, I wasn't involved with the comedic side of Letterman. I was involved more with the production side, but as a kid raised on Johnny Carson and comedy, to be working for Letterman for 8 years off and on, I was like a kid in a candy store. I'm working with these great writers and one of the greatest comedic talk show hosts in television history. It was an icon, so it was great.
Why are we so hungry for comedy?
Well, I think comedy is it's a way that we can look at ourselves in a very non-threatening way. You know, to look at our lives, to explore our insecurities, and even deal with our fears in a very unthreatening way is a real gift, I believe, that can help us deal with our humanness. So I think people, at the end of the day, the reason we have such a hunger to be entertained is because we love stories. I believe when God created us, He created us for story, to connect with other people's stories, and it builds empathy in us, and we understand what this world's all about and what we are, who we are as humans. We see it in stories, and I think we get that from our entertainments.
Okay, you've been quoted as saying that comedy allows us to explore our humanity. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think that when we can laugh at our frailties and look at our insecurities, explore them, and deal with our fears with a great sense of humor, without allowing it to rob our joys, and having a great sense of joy through life, I believe that it's one of the greatest signs of faith and trust in a all-powerful God that there is. Because what it's doing is being able to laugh at ourselves, is us saying and making a declaration that I acknowledge that I'm just a weak, frail human being, but I know that there is a perfect, all-knowing, all-loving God who reigns over my life. And whatever difficulty I may be walking through, I can still have joy.
So why did you start asking the God questions in your life? You had a very successful Hollywood career. Why did you start with the God questions?
Well, it actually goes back to before Isaac Airfred, I was playing in comedy clubs in a sketch group. This is shortly after high school, in my early college years, and I was just disenchanted. We were really moving, we were progressing, we were opening for major acts at the time, like Lily Tomlin and other people that went on to Saturday Night Live, and I just thought, but I'm empty. I'm kind of on a track to accomplish everything I've ever wanted in life, but I felt very, very empty. And I found a Bible in my home, and all I remember from the Bible is that all the red stuff was what Jesus said. So I thought, well, I'll go right to the source. I'll find the most red stuff, and I found the Sermon on the Mount. And Jesus said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." And I thought, you know what? I have my whole life together. Everything is going great. I got great friends. I'm making good money, and I'm getting a little bit of a success. But I think I'm bankrupt in my soul. I think that there's another part of mankind, of being human, that we often neglect. And I realize that I need God. I need God to do that work that only He can do in transforming a soul that was kind of dead and bring it back to life.
How did it affect your career? How did it affect your work with entertainment, that kind of decision
Well,
with God?
It started kind of miraculously with my comedy group. We were doing pretty, profane type humor in the comedy clubs, and I came to faith, and I showed up at the next rehearsal, and I said, before we rehearse, I got an announcement to make. Since we last got together, I became a Christian. I'm going to leave the group. And I turned to my one partner, he said, well, since last time we got together, I became a Christian. And we turned to the third guy, and he said, well, I just rededicated my life to the Lord. And we said, well, we're just naive enough to think we can do the ultimate oxymoron, Christian comedy. And that's what gave birth to Isaac Airfred, and it also charted the course for the rest of my life.
Okay, so without thinking too hard, what's the funniest story in the Bible?
Oh, well, boy, there's a lot of great stuff. I'll tell you, Lorna, almost daily I'll be reading something and I'll go, that is really hysterical. But I think what we sometimes miss is that Jesus, especially in the parables, he would talk about he would use a lot of the elements of comedy, like exaggeration, when he said there's a guy that is picking a speck out of another guy's eye, but he's got a log. And I think that's pretty funny, because if you look on it and you take away, sometimes we put Jesus in this place where we can't realize, well, he's also walking as a human. It's a pretty hysterical story. So I think there's humor all through the Bible.
Well, Dan, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you for the work you do and for chatting with us today.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be on your show.
Okay, Dan Rupple is the president and owner of Seriously Funny Entertainment in Los Angeles, California, and he joined us from a partner studio in Irvine, California. When we come back, my closing thoughts on God and laughter.
I'm Rose Meter. I'm a mom, a wife, and an ER doctor in rural Canada. This year, my husband Rob and I have decided to take our 4 kids on a trip around the world. We have no idea what lies ahead. I'll be updating our journey on the Context with Lorna Dueck website with blog posts and videos about our triumphs and trials and adventures. Won't you join us?
Missed an episode? Catch up with our podcasts. Get up to date on the latest conversations from beyond the headlines. Simply go to our website, click on our link to find current and past podcasts on iTunes. It's free, don't delay. Coming soon on Context, T.D. Jakes, the remarkable motivational pastor, sits down with Sheldon Neal in Dallas, Texas to talk about dreams and the motivation it takes to make them come true. You won't want to miss it. A funny thing happened to the church on its way to the 21st century. Some say it lost its sense of humor, while others argue it never had one. So why did we explore comedy today? Well, God is all about good news. God has engaged the human race with a divine repair job. And yes, it was serious, the agony of the cross for redemption, and for the day-to-day laughter, God says, is a good medicine. If the Proverbs of God calls humor a medicine for life, we best take some. And second, a follower of God can find, as Jesus did, an irony in the hope God has for us. Gee, the way He's made all things and the mess we've made out of it, and yet we have our eye on God's better ideals. Maybe a mess, but there may be a fool for God all in the same breath. It's a conclusion that should help us lighten up for the long haul. Well, for all of us at Context, I'm Lorna Dueck. Thank you for watching, and join us again next week. And you can catch us via podcast or tune in to the website. Thanks.